Hello and welcome back to the Fight and Talk 2 channel with the Fight and Talk 2 team. Myself, Mr. Fight and Talk, the eloquent analyst down below, and over in Casual Corner, we have George the Beard. How are we doing, George?
All good, mate. Thank you. You all right?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for coming back on the show and making time out of your day. We did say to everyone listening that last week you were obviously tending to your bars and stuff that you deal with down on the southwest of the UK. Now that people can drink inside again, which is fantastic. But I don't know if there are any all-night bars that we can actually go and watch UFC or MMA. I don't know if we don't really have that kind of thing in the UK, do we?
We don't, but I'm going to be the first to create them.
There you go. You're going to be the trendsetter. I like it. I like it. How are we doing, eloquent analyst? All good, my friends?
Doing great, man. Back to work as normal. People coming into our store. Very, very strange, but I'm enjoying it, man. I'm enjoying kind of resume to normalcy in some way.
It's crazy. It's crazy because I think people are slowly going to take the mask off as well over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, lockdown in the UK finishes in the middle of June, and I think people are going to slowly take the masks off, and they'll either have a beard underneath or they'll have terrible, terrible skin, and they probably should have kept the mask on.
Most likely.
Yeah, but it's been a nice little break this weekend, not having any UFC, and obviously we can build up, recharge the batteries ready for next week, which is obviously UFC Fight Night 189. Prath, what are you looking forward to next week on the card? Because to be fair, for a fight night, it's pretty damn good. There are some very, very good fights on this card. Some very good fights with some great up-and-comers, some veterans of the game, and fingers crossed it's better than the last couple of fight nights we've had that have fallen just a little bit flat for us on the Fight and Talk 2 channel. Prath, what are you looking forward to, mate?
Man, there's some great fights on this card. Some great names. They've been matched up quite well, but I would say there are individuals on this card that are definitely in the spotlight here. So the first one that kind of draws to mind, and I would say this is all on the prelim card. I'm going to leave the main card to obviously be broken down by all of us here. Sean Woodson versus Yusuf Zalal is a great fight. At featherweight, Sean Woodson has a very unique kind of fighting style. I would say it's similar to nobody. It's literally a very unique style to himself. Very awkward movement. It's quite a slow style compared to most. Most people are going in there and they kind of bum rush the other guy as quickly as possible, get him up against the cage, get him in that clinch position up against the cage, get those hands locked together, and we're going to sit there for 15 minutes. That's not what you're going to get from Sean Woodson. Sean Woodson is a fantastic stand-up fighter. Yusuf Zalal as well is a fantastic stand-up fighter. So I think that's going to be a banging fight. And it's only the second fight into the card, which is fantastic. We're obviously being represented in the UK here on this card in the prelims. Mason Jones against Alan Patrick. Alan Patrick is a legendary Brazilian fighter, going against one of our bright prospects out of the UK. I know George has got some kind words to say about Mason Jones, so I will pass it over to him, but not before I also give a shout out to Francisco Trinaldo. That name always trips me up. Francisco Trinaldo versus Muslim Salikov. Muslim Salikov is obviously the king of Kung Fu in his previous promotion. He's got a great story to him. Very interesting stand-up style, a lot of spinning attacks, which we love to see. I don't know about you guys, but I like a guy with a very diverse kind of skill set. A lot of his spinning attacks. He's great in the wrestling department, great on the ground as well. So very much looking forward to that. Francisco Trinaldo he is just kind of like a God, I don't know how you would describe him. He's kind of like, when I look at him, he looks like he should be mounted into the ground. He just looks like the most solid human being. Unbelievable traps on this guy, and he looks like he's like 65, but he's probably like in his 30s, kind of like George here, and is just he's got a great record. He's had some great fights. He's got some great notable wins as well. So that will be an interesting fight. But those are the ones that kind of stand out for me. Tanner Bosa versus Ilia Latifi is a great fight as well. Ilia Latifi, previously from the Swedish All-Stars team with Alexander Gustafsson and Jimmy Manoa. Now he's training out of American Top Team, and that place is full of absolute killers. Tanner Bosa from Canada, kind of like a throwback Roy Nelson, kind of great hands, great wrestling. Some interesting fights. I don't know if a whole lot of these get finished. When we looked on the previous cards, there were ones that we were like, okay, well, there's a good chance that this will get finished, and the majority of them went to a decision. So I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot here and say that there's going to be a hell of a lot of finishes. I'm going to probably say there's going to be quite a few, especially on the prelim side of things. I feel like there are going to be a lot of decisions, but there are some great prospects on there. But I know George is waiting and beaming to talk about Mason Jones, so I'm going to throw it right over to him.
Straight away.
To you.
You're not going to cut Connor back in and then
All
read
yours,
to
man.
me.
All yours.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of things on the prelim. You know, I was thinking I've got here older, I think Roman Delidze, you know, the big Georgian. I think he's on the prelims. You know, or as I like to call him, Roman Yo-Yo Delidze, because one night he's great, the other night he's rubbish. You know, that seems to be his career so far. Who knows what we're going to get from him on Saturday? But I know he's just changed teams. He's now at Extreme Couture in Las Vegas. So they're producing some pretty good guys, heavyweight these days. Francis Ngannou obviously being the main one. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. I was reading as well today about a female fight, Manon Fiorot.
I want to say it's Foiro.
Well, my French ain't very good. I failed French at school, so I'll apologise. But a lot of MMA journalists, you know, reckons that she's a bit of a problem at 125 pounds. You know, I mean, when they say that she's a problem at 125 pounds, basically what they mean is she might be able to last more than 5 minutes with Valentina. That's what a problem at 125 seems to be. So probably worth keeping an eye out for her. Maybe she's a future title contender. Who knows? Obviously, Mason Jones, you know, British prospects. You know, we always got to support British prospects. You know, obviously him and Tom Breeze are fighting this weekend, so that's great. And obviously Wales at the moment are producing some really great, you know, young talent. Mason Jones, obviously, and Jack Shaw as well. I was obviously doing a bit of research on Mason Jones, and I was really pleased to see that he looks like he's now left Wales and he's now full-time in Sacramento at Uriah Faber's gym, Alpha Male, which is a big move for him. So that's probably exciting, and that's going to do him a world of good. You know, that first fight, I think we all remember that at the time said, like, he lost it and he did lose it, but that was such a great learning experience for him. And I think a combination of that and going out there and every day being in a gym like Alpha Male, that's a big one for Mason Jones. So, yeah, I think it's a big weekend. And like you said, Praf, like Patrick is like a very experienced veteran of the kind of MMA game, but it kind of has a little bit of a feel of this is your opportunity, Mason, to kind of get yourself on the board, get a win in the UFC, and see if we can try and push on from there. So, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing both lads, actually. I'm looking forward to seeing Tom Breeze back as well, because he was a bit disappointing last time out, but hopefully both lads can get it done this weekend.
Fingers crossed. And obviously on the opener of the card is Jordan Levitt. I think his nickname is it the Monkey King or something? Something along them lines?
Yeah, man.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and he obviously had the kind of knockout where he put his arm and got across the guy's face. I can't remember what the guy was called. It was an older gentleman, been in the game for a long time. Prath, you're going to have a look for me now. I cannot remember the guy's name. It's almost like a Sam Alvey kind of character.
Let's have a look. His name is the Monkey. His name is the Monkey King.
I thought so. I was good on that one.
Matt Wyman.
Yeah,
that's
that was it.
He completely.
And then he went over. Then he went over to his wife and apologized.
Yeah, because Wyman's wife's always in the corner for him, and he went over and said, "I'm really sorry." I mean, fair play to him, you know. And then he did a little bit of twerking afterwards. Did the splits in the middle of in the octagon, which is cool. It will be good to see where this young man's future goes. You know, getting a knockout like that as well. It's going to be. The only way is up, and it's unfortunate. You know, obviously we've seen it with Joaquin Buckley. You know, he obviously had the kind of 1-2 spinning round kick thing, but now he seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. He, you know, applied for his job back at Whole Foods and he probably got it. But it just goes to show in the UFC and in MMA in general, the next 1 minute you're at the top of the chain, you're at the top, and then all of a sudden, boom, you are something on someone's shoe. Do you know what I mean? Tony Ferguson is now the butt of all jokes. And I believe Roman Dolidze is fighting Alessio Di Chirico, no?
He was supposed to, but Alessio got pulled from the fight. I believe he had, I think he had an injury of some sort. It wasn't like COVID
Okay.
or anything like that. I think he had an actual
Okay.
injury.
'Cause he was the one that knocked out Joaquin Buckley, wasn't he? And then he kind of said in his post-fight, he was being a bit awkward and saying like, no, I'm not going to say anything because, you know, I knocked this guy out and he can't say anything. And it was very, very strange. You know, he had his 5 minutes of fame there, knocking out the guy that knocked someone else out in dramatic fashion. He knocked him out in dramatic fashion. And, you know, you've really got to capitalize on these kind of things, you know, you really, really do. George, give me your 2 cents on that, bud.
Just a quick little thing is just, I want to say that they always say the highest of highs and the lowest of lows.
Absolutely.
Hey, well, talking of the highest and highest, lowest of lows, if we're going to just push on to the main card slightly, Ponzinibbio is the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows, because obviously, like, injuries have been his kind of like big downfall. Nothing else really. The couple of years out has been a killer blow, you know. But I think before that he was ranked 6th in the world, and now had that that bad loss in January on Fight Island against Jing Lang, you know, where he got beat up bad, and obviously now going to face, you know, another top, you know, a top prospect in Miguel Baeza. You know, he's in for, you know, this is kind of where the kind of cruel game of MMA kind of starts to take hold, because he's in a position now where he's got to fight his way back, and to fight your way back, you've got to beat all of these like young, hungry killers that want your place. And I think Miguel Baez is probably one of the most dangerous ones out of all of them. You know, a 10-0 prospect. You know, and you know, obviously there's going to be a question put out later this week on the Fight and Talk to Twitter, which I'm proposing, which is he a future title contender? And I think he is. You know, from what he's seen so far. You know, he's had a win over a veteran in Matt Brown, a win over Takashi Soto, who's I think 16-3 in his career. You know, they're pretty respectable wins. You know, and if you add a Ponzinibbio to your record, people are going to start looking at you going, "Oh man, this guy's super dangerous." So yeah, definitely when you think about a guy who's was at the top of his game with that win in Argentina against Neil Magny to the guy that he is now, it seems like a different world away for Ponzinibbio.
No, definitely.
Another notable thing about Miguel Baeza as well is he trains out of MMA Masters, which is currently housing Colby Covington. So you know he's getting some incredible wrestling. He's getting taken down every single minute of the day. So I feel like wrestling would probably not be much of a problem for him.
Hopefully he doesn't end up with Colby Covington's mouth.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
But the one thing, you know, the one good thing about Colby Covington, not that there are many, is his cardio. So if you can imagine that, you know, everyone coming out of that camp is going to have the same level of cardio, I think Ponzinibbio is in for a very, very rough night. A very rough night. And after his last performance, I think it was his cardio that let him down. He came out very strong. Oh, no, he didn't. Didn't he get knocked out within the first minute and a half?
Yeah, he did. yeah. Li Jingliang finished him very, very quickly into that fight.
Yeah. So fingers crossed, you know.
But he looked good. He looked good until he got finished, to be fair.
Yeah. And it's one of them things, you know, as we always talk about on this show, all you need is 2 or 3 years out, 2 years out, you come back and the game has changed. The game is constantly developing. You know, we're going to talk about, obviously, in the next coming weeks, obviously, Conor McGregor is fighting again. And I feel like he had such a long time out and fighting at such infrequencies that the game just changed around him. The fighters around him got so much better, you know, and I feel like, you know, people that take those 2 years out, especially between the ages of like 29 and 31, when everyone else that's the same age, they're in their prime and they're coming right in and they're honing on their skills. You're coming out of that kind of like group of 31-year-olds going, well, I just missed the last 2 years of like hardcore training. And it can only get tougher.
Just look at Dustin and Conor.
I was just going to say, the thing is, like you were saying though, like fair play, you know, go and make your money, you know, Conor McGregor, but those kind of years away fighting Floyd Mayweather, he'll look back on it potentially and go, for my MMA career, that was a terrible move, you know, from a career standpoint. And you're right, it's affected him. It's affected him quite badly, you know. And there's actually, he goes into that trilogy fight looking certainly like the underdog.
Yeah. Just look at the difference between Dustin and Connor and their fighting styles and their acumen when they were in the cage, right? Dustin Poirier just looks so much sharper. Especially he took the first round. I think he wanted to use that first round against Connor to just kind of see what he would bring to the table. And as soon as the second round started, he was just on him and just hitting him with combinations and just was able to adjust in a way that Connor wasn't able to. And I think as well, like he used that first round, the leg kicks in that first round to really kind of give Connor something to think about. And then as soon as he was worried about his leg, he was hitting him with great combinations to the head. And I think that was the big difference between the two of them. And obviously Dustin having just come off of the fight with Dan Hooker and going through an absolute war with someone like that, I think will just really adds to your game. Look at when Dustin fought Justin Gaethje. He came out of that fight with like a new appreciation for leg kicks, and he came out every single fight since then and has thrown an absolute hell ton of leg kicks because he just knows how effective it is because he got his leg blasted by Justin Gaethje. So just the adjustments that you're able to have fight to fight is such a big gap between Dustin and Conor in that sense. Not to say that Conor is not a finisher.
Conor most certainly is a finisher, but I feel like Conor McGregor is bringing Conor McGregor every time. And when he came out and fought Dustin Poirier, he brought Conor McGregor, which is a fantastic performance, a very good showman, the same shots, the same stance, the same everything. People have wised up to that now. Do you know what I mean? There's not just karate stance Conor McGregor and bald Conor McGregor and motivated Conor McGregor. That's fine. But then there's, the ever-changing evolution of Dustin Poirier. Do you know what I mean? He's just been constantly changing. He's one of, you see it in like all the Terminator movies and stuff. He's a supercomputer. Just, I've seen this before. I know how to beat this. I've seen this before. I know how to beat this. It's just one of them things, It really, really is. I was sparring the other day, the boxing class that I take. I was doing a little bit of sparring, and this guy, he would do the same 1, 2, 3, and then he'd try and rush in, and I'd just check hook him, and I did it every single time. Move, check hook, and he was like, "How come you keep catching me on that shot?" I said, "Because you're doing the same thing over and over again. So that's all I need to do to beat you." It's basic maths, man. Basic maths. George, tell me.
I was just going to say about the whole, like, if now we're on the whole Dustin kind of thing, was, I think Dustin has committed his whole existence to the game, hasn't he? And that's now coming to fruition for him. While Conor's had that kind of time away and he's gone off and done other things, and like he's changed the game in his own way. The whole, but when it comes to the fight on July 10th, the simple question is this. It just comes back to Conor McGregor. How much do you really want it, and what adjustments are you going to make to get you through? Like, Conor has proven that he can make adjustments at times to make himself better. He has shown that, but this is going to be one hell of an adjustment, really, because he got pummeled like in January.
And look on the other side. It's not like Dustin's not going to make any adjustments from that first round as well. You don't think he's going to be a little bit more cautious of that left hand? I think he wanted to see what Conor's power was like after all of this time as well. The other thing as well, guys, how good is Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier going to be? That is going to be an absolute classic fight. I'm telling you now, that is going to be one of the fight of the year whenever that goes down.
It's going to be fireworks, definitely. Dustin Poirier's hands, but then also, as soon as that hits the ground, Charlie Olives is going to be a wriggly worm around Dustin Poirier. I think Dustin gets choked out by him. I really, really do.
Dustin's got an amazing guillotine. I think Dustin's got an amazing guillotine that is very underrated. He caught Khabib in it, but Khabib was able to get out. And I think that is only like a 1% of people that were able to navigate themselves around that kind of guillotine position.
I'd tell you something else. Now we're on the subject as well. Gaethje Chandler is going to be a bit of a barn burner as well when that goes down. Cool, that is going to be fireworks.
Is that the next scheduled fight?
Well, that's the one they're both saying. That's the one they want next, isn't it? Those two. So it makes total sense for the UFC to put that one together.
That's a good one. Did you see that Eddie Alvarez had responded to Mike Chandler saying that if Eddie can beat him, then I can, and I just think that's like MMA maths in your head, Eddie. I respect you. You're a legend of the game, but take your MMA maths and go back to ONE FC, mate.
Yeah.
Where you're getting knocked out. Where you're getting knocked out every bloody fight.
Yeah, how's one going for you, Eddie, as well?
It's not going well. It's not going well. But back to this weekend, the resurgence of the heavier weight divisions, obviously the heavyweight division in particular this weekend, and what we've seen over the past couple of weeks as well. There's obviously a couple of fights this weekend in the heavyweight division. Walt Harris versus Marcin Tybura. I think that's going to be a cracker. But we never know with heavyweight fights whether they're going to be a 3-round, right, I'm going to try and hit you, I'm going to leg kick a little bit, and we're both just going to look at each other for a little bit, and then we're going to walk around and get tired. Or is it going to be a bang, crash, wallop? Let's go, let's do this. Walt, the big ticket Harris, has got a bit of a strange record, 13-9. In my head, I always think that he's better than he is. I don't know what it is. I don't expect him to have such a high percentage of losing matches. But Prath, what do you think about this fight? And Marcin Tybura is obviously an up and comer in the heavyweight division as well. There's a lot of steam behind him, similar to Tanner Boza. There's a lot of people.
I would say Marcin Tybura is a little bit of a UFC vet at this point. I know he's been fighting in there for a very long time. I know he's only had a couple of fights at heavyweight now. But he did pretty well at light heavyweight before he went up. Lost a couple of the key fights, but that's kind of the way it goes. You either lose those key fights and move on to the championship fights, or you take those losses, learn from them, maybe go up a weight class or down a weight class. And those are the ways you make those adjustments, right? And I also agree, Walt Harris is one of those guys as well that I think fans think he's a lot better than he is. I think it's because he has a great striking style, but then you often get him mixed up with Marcin Tybura or Olenek or any of these guys that are like tremendous grapplers, and they just take him down and they're just able to do whatever they want to him. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see here this weekend. Marcin Tybura is a hell of a grappler in the sense that he is just very much a control guy. Not so much about grappling, not so much, he's not hitting incredible double leg takedowns and slamming guys on the floor and taking their back and choking them out. He's going to hold him up against the cage. He's gonna crotch dive for him, if that's what you want to call it, and he's gonna just kind of hold him down and control him. And that's kind of what I see here for Walt Harris in his future. I think he's a great striker. I do think that he has a very diverse striking style as well. Not conventional in the sense that he doesn't just sit there and throw 1 and 2s. He's throwing flying knees and kicks, spinning kicks and stuff like that as well, which I really respect. Especially in the heavyweight division where you got a lot of those kind of slower generations of fighters. Walt Harris has always been quite a speedy guy within the confines of a heavyweight division. When you're looking at those guys at 265, they're very labored, they're very slow, but as soon as they hit you, it's gonzo. And so I think when you match him up against strikers, he tends to do very well. Even if he loses, he tends to do very well. But against grapplers, I don't think I can ever think of a time that Walt Harris hasn't been absolutely grappled to the ground and just controlled. And I think that's exactly, he's fighting out of Alabama as well, which, there isn't a tremendous amount of guys fighting out of. Oh, is he moved?
Yeah, he's also a guy who's gone to Extreme Couture.
Oh, great move, man. Great move. Extreme Couture, Eric Nixick is doing great stuff out there. And John Wood is the other guy, right? He's dating or married to Joanne Calderwood. He's one of the head trainers over there, and I saw him in Francis's corner when he fought Stipe. I know that guy is doing tremendous work out there, getting all these guys ready for their fights, man. I'm really loving what they're doing right now, and they have a great. It looks like they've got a great stable of guys, but it looks like more guys are attracted to coming through. And I think that Extreme Couture is one of the reasons, and I think the other reason you see a lot of these guys move out there is the use of the Performance Institute, the recovery side of things, going and getting cryotherapy and getting physical therapy, and you can get your diet sorted out there. It's kind of a no-brainer now. If you're a UFC fighter, if you don't spend even a little bit of time in the PI, you're really, really missing out, because they're giving all of these facilities for free to these fighters. Like, it would seem silly not to take advantage of all these things.
It's good to see the fighters are moving around. And, we've spoken about this on this show as well. Sometimes if you stay in the same camp for too long, you get surrounded by yes men. And yes, or should we say, to be a little bit more politically correct, we should say yes people. where you get surrounded by yes people, because if you're in a camp and you seem to be doing well in the camp, everyone's going, "You're doing great, buddy. You're doing great. You're doing great." You get into the cage, you get slapped. Wasn't your night. It wasn't your night, mate. Back to the gym. And it's like, no, do a couple of camps, lose a couple of fights, get yourself out of there, man. Get yourself out of there and get yourself into a camp where you can get some new opponents, some fresh opponents. And
even if you don't stay there, just at least to have the experience of going to a camp, a different one, and you see a lot of these guys, big fish in a small pond, right? If you go to an ATT, that is just an absolute piranha tank full of human beings, and you've got people all across the board. You've got great grapplers, you've got great strikers. Like it seems weird that you would want to just be in a camp where you're the biggest name there, and people are looking to you to be kind of like the leader of your team, right? But when you are the only person in the UFC and the rest of your teammates are regional MMA fighters, amateur MMA fighters, or just making their way into the pro side of things, you need, like, especially when you're fighting top 10 heavyweight, right, or top 10 any division, you need someone who is also like at the highest level possible, whether it's a striker at the highest level possible. You find someone from Glory, or the best grappler, someone who competes in ADCC. You need someone in there that's really going to push you to be the best version of yourself. And if you're just going in there and you've got your trainers going, "You're doing great, you're doing fantastic," you see a lot of the times where the guy is being absolutely demolished in the first round. He gets into the corner and the guy's put ice on his back and he's like, "Great first round, you did great, you did, what are you talking about? What, are you watching the same fight I was? Because your guy just got grappled for the entirety of the 5 minutes." And I hate that they're not giving them constructive information, right? Oh, get your foot in the hips, move away from them. There's nothing like that. It's just like, you're just trying to reaffirm what they're doing in there. But when they're not doing great, you need to tell them that, and you need to give them adjustments so that when they come into the second round, they have a completely different game plan. And you only get that when you've been pushed yourself in those camps, right? You've got those 6 weeks before you get in there. And if you know in the second round that you're not being pushed, then in the actual fight itself, you're just going to get worked. And that's what happens a lot of the time. They come out in the first round, they get their crap advice, they come out in the second round, and they just get worked again.
Completely. And there's quite a lot of the guys in the UFC and stuff that are based in the UK.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of them go over to the States to get a bit of training done. When we had John Hathaway on the show, he obviously fights out of London Shoot Fighters, which is very, very close to my heart. But he said, I needed to go to the States to work at some other places, put some work in some places where wrestling is the full background. And, he's got a little gym down on the South Coast that he just does wrestling out of. He's got like a MMA gym, but it's very, very wrestling heavy. And it's very, very rare you'll find that from someone that is born and bred in the UK and stayed in the UK. He's kind of, honed his skills over in the States. George, tell me.
I'll say that's why Jack Shaw is so different, because he's showing a game that is wrestling heavy, and that's something quite unique to England at the moment. But like we said about Walt Harris and Marcin Tybura, the Walt Harris, I was listening to a podcast with Walt Harris and Brandon Moreno, who was obviously fighting in a couple of weeks in that massive rematch title fight, and they were both talking about like moves that they needed to make. And Prav, you've already said it. He was like, my striking is really good, but my wrestling's really not great, and I needed the change. I needed to go somewhere where I was going to be tested more and more, and Extreme Couture was the opportunity that I just couldn't say no to. So it's nice when fighters acknowledge that and say, look, I needed to go and get better. I needed to go and improve myself. And he was acknowledging as well that his record isn't pretty, which it isn't, 13-9. He is on a losing streak, and that another loss here, questions will start to be asked. Is the UFC the right place for me to be in? He says that he's never been in a better position to win because of where he is. And I would agree with that. It's no offense to whoever he was training with down in Alabama, but they're not going to compare to who that he's training with in Las Vegas. That's just a fact. Interestingly as well, side point, Brandon Moreno was saying that he's been talking to the guys at American Top Team about transferring over to there. Wow. which is pretty interesting. But yeah, I've had the same feeling as you, Connor. I always think of Walt Harris, and I think of a guy who's way better than his record shows, and perhaps this move to Extreme Couture is the kind of resurgence. But I think Tybura gets this one done. I think he knows how to beat Walt Harris, and I think the lack of kind of real heavy kind of training time, will end up stacking up against him. I always feel like harsh as well going after Walt Harris. He's obviously been through a terrible few years, in his personal life, and I think that's no shame that probably has played a huge factor in maybe it being hard going, maybe being home in Alabama has been tough, and maybe getting away from there is also good for the mind as well, to try and have something a bit fresh and new. He's the type of guy that you always want him to do well. You always want him to go out there and do well. But I do feel this weekend that Tybura is gonna get this one done, and he is gonna win. And
do you think, obviously he has gone through a lot of stuff over the past couple of years, but do you think that is why in the MMA community we see him as someone that is more prevalent in the kind of eyes of everyone, because he was, obviously every week there was obviously searches and stuff like that, and various different things going on. But do you think that he's more in the public eye because of that, and not necessarily because of his fighting?
There will be an element to that. I actually feel that because, like, if you've got a heart, like, you've become endeared to him in a way, haven't you? You completely feel for him, so you almost buy into him more because of what's happened. Mm-hmm. There'll be a part of you sat there on Saturday night going, "Oh, I really hope Walt Harris wins this." Because I don't think he's won since obviously this terrible kind of the tragedy and the death of his daughter happened, like his stepdaughter. So it's like I feel like just for him himself, that win would be the biggest thing of his whole career for him. It might be a turning point for him, completely. But while the kind of rock continues, it feels like it could get worse for him. He needs just to find a way, however you do it, to get a win on the board. And sadly, I don't think Tybura is the type of person who is the best person to be fighting to try and get that win that he is so desperately craving.
Yeah, especially coming off of one camp, right? You've just gone to this camp now. You're not going to get the fruits of that labor until you get like 2 or 3 camps in. So I don't know if it was kind of UFC matchmaking here that threw him Tybura, but that's a tough matchup, even if the majority of your losses are against grapplers, right?
Yeah, and he was actually saying that he was still in Alabama before the Tybura matchup, but as soon as Tybura got announced, which I think, I guess is like 8 weeks out, that was when he went to Extreme Couture. He went straight away. He literally phoned Eric Nixick and said, "Look, I need to get out. I need something else." So I think that is a huge positive that he recognises that. But like you said, that I agree. He probably needs 2 or 3 camps in there before he's fully going.
It reminds me of the UFC game. When you can only get a certain amount with the free gym, and then you can only get so good with the free gym, and then you have to upgrade and go to different gyms, and they all have different backgrounds. And the first time you play it, you just stay in the same gym. You're like, yeah, it's cool, I'll just stay here. And then you never win a championship or anything. And then after a little while, you kind of go, you know what, I'm going to do a little bit of time in all of these gyms and kind of like pick up different skills from various different places. It's a lot easier to look at it on the screen and just decide you're going to go to a different gym. Because I can imagine there's probably quite a lot of costs as well that are involved with, especially in the States, moving various different places and even moving from the UK over to America to do your camp or whatever. You've got to live somewhere for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks before your fight.
Well, Walt Harris is living with Francis Ngannou at the moment. He's sleeping in Francis Ngannou's spare room. That's what he was saying on this podcast. And I was like, Beautiful. Fair play.
I love it.
That is a massive household.
They don't have doors in that house. They don't have doors. They're all been ripped off. But George, who's over in Crush Corner this week? I want to know who you're crushing on and why, my friend.
Well, I'm crushing on a guy I've already mentioned. I'm crushing on Caramel Thunder. Miguel Baeza this week. I'm like I said, undefeated welterweight prospect. I genuinely think a top 5 contender, top 5 fighter in the next couple of years, and a future title contender. He's got a great record already. He's beaten veterans, beating guys with good records, and this is the opportunity this weekend to take out a top guy He's been right at the upper echelon, shall we say, of that division. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to kind of announce yourself fully to the US, kind of to the US market. A great couple of wins, but a win over Ponzinibbio takes you a long, long way forwards, and it gets people worried about you as well. I think, if people start looking at your record and you go, you've beaten Matt Brown, you've beaten Takashi Soto, you've now beaten Santiago Ponzinibbio. People start to take notice and go, this guy's a problem. So definitely this weekend, old Caramel Thunder is in Crush Corner. And on top of that, not only he is quite a beautiful looking human being. He is a good looking man, to be fair. So yeah.
I would.
He'll be
I would.
Crush Corner. You would, Kraft, would you?
I would. Yes, I do. Wow. I do fancy him.
There we go.
You'd like a bit of his Caramel Thunder, wouldn't you? And on to the main event. Obviously, we have Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rozenstruik versus Augusto Sakai. Both of these guys are heavy guys coming into this, and there is no doubt that they'll be coming in at 255, 260, something around that mark. But Rozenstruik, I feel like he was on a good skid. He was on a good, not skid, sorry. He was on a good run. Now he's on a bit of a skid. And all you need, like we said, all you need is one loss, and that's it. You're back to the bottom of the pile. But Prath, what do you think? Do you think this fight is main event worthy, or do you think that we could have had something on this card that could have been a little bit higher to take over on this one?
Are you asking me if there was another fight on this card that deserved to be in the main event, or are you asking me if there is another fight in next week or the week after that could have potentially been the main event?
Is there another fight on this card that you feel would have taken precedent over this? Because both of these guys, Rozenstruik's obviously coming off a loss. Sakai is, I don't know what he's coming off of.
A loss.
I mean,
yeah.
The only other fight that I could see potentially, just because knowing the UFC and who they generally will book in the main event and not, the only other fight that I can see them really kind of getting behind would have been Ponzinibbio versus Baeza.
Yeah,
is the only other one that I could see as the main event in terms of name. Be a little bit. I don't know. I'd actually say Ponzinibbio is a little bit more well known than both of these guys here. But then, are they looking to highlight again? This kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the rhetoric behind how they build the cards. Maybe they're looking at Sakai as someone that can be a heavyweight prospect, or maybe they're looking at Rozenstruik and hoping that he can get back a win. Because you were saying that Rozenstruik's on a bit of a skid at the moment, but as far as I can see, he's only lost 2 fights. One of them to the biggest name, the champion at the heavyweight division, which is Francis Ngannou, who's killed everybody.
Yeah.
And Cyril Gane, who is basically the next person up, I would say, in terms of who is prospects at the heavyweight division. For me, Cyril Gane is sitting pretty much at the top of that list.
But why is Rozenstruik in a main event after the last main event that he was in against Cyril? No, the last fight he was in was one of the most boring fights I've ever seen in my life with Cyril Gane.
Yeah.
Why would you put him in the main event position?
It takes 2 to tango, right? I feel like Cyril Gane, the pace that he had in that fight is kind of what was dictating there. And I think Rozenstruik is someone that's a counter fight. It goes back to watching 2 counter strikers fight, right? When you're watching them, they're just waiting to see if one will throw a punch for the other one to counter, right? And you've got 2 boys in there that will knock each other out, right? They can knock each other out with one shot, either way, right? And I think they were very much aware of that. And I think, he had come off of the loss against Francis, who is, an ex-teammate, if you will, of Cyril Gane, not training directly out of Paris, France. He's now training mostly out of that Las Vegas team, right? And so I think he looked at Cyril Gane as oh my God, this is Francis 2.0. If I let him touch me, he's going to put me to sleep. Mm-hmm. So I need to do what I can to, maybe wait for him to take his shot before I take mine. And again, he spent the entire 5 rounds waiting, looking for something that wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the big problem there with that fight. Apart from that, look at the rest of his fights, right? Junior Albini, KO. Alan Crowder, KO. Andrei Arlovsky, KO. Alistair Overeem, KO. Junior DeSantis, KO. He's beaten all of these guys by finish.
Just got cut. So is he just beating up bums? Is he beating up fighters that are on the back end of their career anyway? Is he beating up the old, the old people's home? Junior DeSantis got cut. Overeem got cut.
Yeah, but Overeem's a legend though. Everyone disagreed that Overeem shouldn't have been cut.
Yeah, completely. But he was on the back end of his career.
Also, as well, let's be honest, Rozenstruik was losing that fight with Overeem, and if he hadn't knocked him out, he would have lost by the decision.
Yeah,
he got
and
lucky that night.
And arguably, he got lucky with that stoppage there. That referee was a little bit, kind of gave it to him a little bit. With the lip. God, that was crazy, man.
It was pretty bad, but if it hadn't have happened, he would have 100% lost that night. So we'd be looking at a worse record.
But what I will say about both of these guys is they've only had 1 or 2 losses, right? The rest of it is wins. I would say that Sakai as well has got quite a lot of KO wins, TKO wins, in between a lot of decisions, split decisions, things of that nature. So we are either going to see one of 2 guys. And in both corners as well, we're going to see one of 2 guys. We're going to see someone that's very tentative, knowing that they have taken a loss. Do they want to have another loss? They want to get back on the winning track, right? So they might play it a little bit more safe. I think you can see that from both sides, right? They're both coming off of losses in that sense as well. So I think it's going to be a tough fight. I think both guys have great skills, but I feel like there could be an element of them not wanting to engage as much as well. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we might see a repeat of the Garn versus Rozenstruik fight, which is in the sense that I think both guys just don't want to lose. And they both have very few losses on their record, 15 and Augusta Sakai is 15-2 and Biggie Boy is 11-2. So, they've only had very few losses. And I think that while this is a good matchup in that sense that they're very close in records, that will also kind of stunt them in a way, because I feel like they will kind of want to protect that record. They want to move forward, obviously. They don't, at this point as well, because they're coming off of losses, I don't think they'll care about whether it's a decision or a finish. I think they'll just want to get the win. They want to get their hand raised. They want to get back on the winning track. So obviously, I know a lot of the, if you talk to, I'm sure if we talk to Biggie Boy right now, he'd be like, yeah, I'm going for the finish. I'm going for first round knockout. That's because he's a big boy and he's not going to want to go for all 5 rounds. But I have a feeling that Sakai will probably use a lot of those takedowns, maybe try and kind of ground him a little bit, maybe try and pepper him up on the ground. I think Rozenstruik outworks him on the feet, whether that's in a kind of clinching position or just, in a straight up stand-up fight. I think Rozenstruik gives him work, but I think Augusta Sakai he'll have to diversify his game. He'll have to mix in takedowns. He'll have to hold him up against the cage for a little bit just to kind of sap some of that energy away, take a little bit of pop off those punches. And then maybe then at that point, 3rd, 4th round, he can maybe look for a finish if he can really kind of grind out Jairzinho. But Jairzinho isn't a quitter either. That's one thing I will say. You've seen him in a lot of the fights where, look, even in that Overeem fight, right? He was getting worked for most of those 4 rounds, but he still managed, in that 5th round, I'll give him the credit, man. In the 5th round, he came out like a bat out of hell and he looked to put Alistair Overeem away, and he put Alistair Overeem away. Whether we feel like that's the right decision the referee made or whatever, the referee still came in, still stopped the fight and still gave him that win. So, tough fight. I will say that. I think it's going to be a tough fight either way. I think that Biggie Boy can maybe pull it out. I think he could potentially get a KO here, but it's very much, I feel like, ask me this question again halfway through the 1st round, and I feel like I can give you a better answer here. But I think any of us could be able to dictate it from there.
And obviously, Jairzinho, when he came into the UFC, he made a lot of noise very, very early on, and he was on his way to getting a title shot and to obviously fight for the title. 2 losses back, obviously knocked him down a little bit. But George, where do you see him going if he gets the win after this weekend? Because the heavyweight division seems to be getting so packed full of up and comers and a real resurgence of fighters. Obviously, we've been speaking about John Jones as well, whether he's coming to heavyweight, whether he's not coming to heavyweight. Derek Lewis, who's he fighting? Has he got anything booked? You know, Ngannou, when's Ngannou fighting? What's going on with Stipe? There's so many different questions about the heavyweight division. And, you know, that kind of top 6 to 8 is getting very, very tight in there. But where does Rozenstruik go after this weekend if he gets the W?
Oh, Christ. The only guy I can really think of, maybe Curtis Blades.
Yeah.
Maybe towards a guy like that, because you mean like if Lewis and Ngannou gets booked and then John Jones needs a fight and maybe they try and do the Stipe thing, I don't know. Like everyone starts to get booked up pretty damn quick then, don't they? So like I guess, you know, you're looking at kind of like people like Curtis Blades, you know, but there's not too much more above him, I don't think, like that isn't already kind of in the pipeline to get booked. So I think he might end up being a bit of a waiting game. And that'll be the same for Augusto Sakai, to be honest. You know, if he wins Saturday, he'll be in a bit of a waiting game. You know, I agree with Praf. You know, I think this could be a bit of a tentative kind of fight. You know, I was looking at all the kind of like numbers of it all, and they're pretty much equal, these guys. There's not really much difference, you know, pretty much the same height, pretty much the same reach. You know, there's not too much difference in like their average weight. You know, it's like they are pretty damn similar, these two. So
even their record.
Yeah, even their
record's really similar.
Really close. Like it's really hard to kind of like think about who might win this. And you know, the only like two conclusions I can see is I can see Rozenstruik knocking Sakai out, or I can see Sakai grinding it for a decision, a bit like how Cyril Gane did it. And when I think about where both guys are and like what they're kind of doing, for some reason, I just see Sakai grinding it out and avoiding that like huge kind of like that huge kind of one punch knockout power that Rozenstruik does carry. You know, I'll be honest with you, I'm yet to be convinced by Biggie Boy. That's the honest answer. I'm not massively. I thought the Overeem one, he got it done, but he wouldn't have got it done if he hadn't had the knockout. You know, the Ngannou one, just forget about it. You know, like it happens, right? You get knocked out in 20 seconds. You know, it happens with Ngannou sometimes. Whatever. Gino Dos Santos, you know, like a legend of the game, but was on his way out. And then obviously Cyril Gane is kind of like, it was boring, but he kind of just ground Rozenstruik out. I'm just not sure like where he's going, Rozenstruik. And this lot, if he was to lose at the weekend, it would be even more of a bigger question mark where he's actually heading. You know, when he turned up in UFC, this was an elite kickboxer. This is a guy who's fought in Glory, he's fought in Ryzen. You know, he was really, really highly touted, and he looked really good in his first few fights. But he's kind of almost plateaued. Like he's kind of like, it almost feels like he's not going to get any better. He's kind of at that level, but this level's not good enough. But like I said, he does carry that one thing that heavyweights, you know, some heavyweights do have. That's one punch knockout power. But I just think that it's going to go the similar kind of way to the last fight, and I think a Sakai, who for me is who's a bit more well-rounded overall, I could just see him kind of grinding it out for 25 minutes.
There's a couple of names I can just throw in there at the top of the heavyweight division. Obviously, I've got the rankings in front of me, and I know young George doesn't, so I thought I'd just throw him a little bit of a bone here. So the only other people that are kind of above Rozenstruik and Sakai, you've got Curtis Blades, Alexander Volkov, which is a name I didn't think of, Cyril Gane as well. I think if Augusto Sakai can secure a win here, they might match him up against Cyril Gane.
He's booked.
Oh, Cyril Gane's booked against who?
Volkov and Cyril Gane are booked to fight each other this summer.
Oh, I did not know that. There you go.
Yeah.
Great fight.
There you
go. I tell you what, though, another one. I've got what's the big old Russian called? Is it Shamil Abdurrahimov?
Abdurrahimov.
Yeah, he's just been booked against Chris Dorcas, hasn't he?
Very nice.
Great fight.
If Dorcas was to come through that, Dorcas Rozenstruik, Dorcas Sakai, that might be a good one to kind of throw out like late summer, early autumn. That might be a good one for both guys, to be honest. Chris Dorcas is quickly making his way up the rankings. Hopefully as well, when we talk about the kind of heavyweights, hopefully we'll see Tom Aspinall get booked soon as well.
Maybe against Ivanov?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm guessing as well, probably on that UFC London card in August is probably a likely kind of time for him to get booked, isn't it? So, but yeah, no, like
Depends
it's
how
hard
quick
to
they're
pick.
going to push these people through, doesn't it?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
It's about the favorable matchups, though. Look at Conor McGregor, right? Again, on his rise when he came up, man, it was the favorable matches that were able to get him to those positions, right? If they chuck Tom Aspinall to Jairzinho or someone like that, who's a very experienced kickboxer, it might be a difficult night in the office for a Tom Aspinall. He's still making his way up, but I think if they can match him up well as he makes his way to the top, he will be able to then smash anyone below him.
Agreed. He would give people like Biggie Boy though problems on the ground.
Yeah, he's got great jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, he's got great jiu-jitsu, Tom Aspinall. So that's almost like his like almost dark horse kind of weapon. Like people kind of like don't really think of when you think of heavyweights, you don't really put that kind of down. And Aspinall has got that. To be fair, that is, and going forward, like you said, if you match him correctly though, and you give him time to develop even more, imagine how good his jiu-jitsu might be in 2 or 3 years' time. Yeah, he could be a serious problem at that point.
It is really good to see that the heavyweight division is making some noise, you know? I mean, just looking at, obviously we're all just looking at the rankings there, and it's nice to see that outside of the top 6, there's actually some names that we all know. Do you know what I mean? There's actually, is it Pavlovich or Pavlovich? Sergey
Pavlovich.
Pavlovich, yeah, even him. You know what? He's sitting on the fringe of 13 or something, and there's a lot of people, but I feel like they pushed Cyril Gane too quickly. He's 8-0, but now he's ranked number 3. And you think
I think he's Francis's training partner. He's because of that they were able to put a story behind him and push him forward because of how well Francis did.
Yeah.
They think okay, well Francis did so good, so his training partner must be like elite as hell. So they would chuck him in against anyone. But like he's still developing his skills. And I think if you look at the post fight of Cyril Gane versus Rozenstruik, Gane, mentioned that in abundance. Like, I've still got improvements to make. I'm still a learning fighter. I'm still trying to become a more developed fighter. But you're number 3 in the heavyweight rankings. So is this a time to improve, or is this a time to actually just be better in general?
I think if he beats Volkov in the summer, at that point, then you can then start to go, yeah, this guy, he is where he is because he deserves to be. I think
Volkov's
that's kind
tough,
of
man.
Yeah, Volkov's the big kind of test. I think this is kind of like the big one. Beating Rozenstruik, cool. Obviously, Junior. I think it was Junior dos Santos before that, so it's like, yeah, okay, fine. I think Volkov is the big test. It's like that's kind of like, how are you really ready for the top like heavyweights?
Yeah, it was the JDS behind the ear elbow thing, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
But it's good to see some of these guys moving around, and it's good to see that there's so many fights being booked now. Obviously we had this weekend off of the UFC, but I feel like there's just fight upon fight upon fight. We've got the rematch of Figueiredo versus Moreno, which is going to be an absolute banger. We've got Conor versus Dustin. We've got Leon versus Diaz. We've got they just keep coming up, and they just keep coming up and up and up and up and up, And it's unfortunate that the last couple of weeks of fights that we've had did fall a little bit flat with regards to finishes and with regards to, big names and excitability. But the UFC are very, very smart. The UFC machine are very, very smart at keeping everyone very, very interested, very, very interested. Anything else on this weekend before we wrap up the show?
One more thing very quickly. There's a guy fighting Todorovic called Gary Rodriguez. He is the ultimate person. If you get a call and you want to be a yes man, say yes. Literally 10 days ago, he was fighting in the LFA middleweight title fight. He won that fight. He literally got a call from the UFC saying, do you want to fight Todorovic? He said yes, and now he's suddenly fighting in the UFC. When chances come available, don't say no, take them. And, who knows where it might take him. But yeah, he's making his debut. He's just obviously come from a breeding ground, which LFA is, for UFC talent. So yeah, he might be someone as well to keep an eye out on this weekend. But I'm still thinking Todorovic probably gets it done against him.
Beautiful.
And for me, And for me, one of the fights that is kind of completely slipped past all of us that I've just realized is actually even on the card is Makwan Amirkhani is fighting. He was supposed to be fighting. Nate Landauer, but he got injured and got replaced by a person called Kamula Kirk, which is a fantastic name. Don't know anything about him, but obviously know Makwan is a great Finnish fighter, European, shout out, represent. Very much looking forward to. He's always had a very weird up and down career as well, so I'm really excited. I wanna see him get on the track, man, because he's had great wrestling. He was one of those very few European wrestlers that are out there. So want to see him do well. I know he's training with SPG. So he will have a great corner behind him. So just want to see him come out here and string together some wins, man, because he came out in his first fight and he had that crazy, it was like a 10-second fight. He came out and threw like a flying knee that didn't quite land. And then he was able to punch the other guy out and take a TKO win, which I believe was actually on the Rumble versus Gustafsson card back in the day. So quite a while ago. But I know that Makwan fought Shane Burgos quite recently, and Shane Burgos just absolutely outworked him. I know he's made some improvements in his boxing. I know he took a couple of boxing fights as well before coming back to the UFC. I think he took like a year or two time out from the UFC, fought a couple of boxing fights just to improve his game because he is predominantly a wrestler. And I'm hoping to see some of those improvements in this fight here. He's fighting a promotional newcomer as well. So I'm hoping that it will give him an opportunity and maybe give him a platform to really show his skills.
Do you think he's going to get a finish?
No. I think he'll probably grind out a wrestling heavy attack here, just knowing his style and what he brings to the table in general. And he got knocked out by Shane Burgos, so he's not going to sit there and try and sit in the pocket with my dude here. I don't know. Kamula Kirk might be like the craziest striker we've ever seen, and he just absolutely comes out and fly kicks him in the first second. Who knows, man? MMA is the wildest sport because of that.
You just don't know. Where did you say he was from?
He's from Finland originally, but I believe he has I want to say Kurdish. He has a Kurdish background.
That was what I said. Is he going to get a finish? I didn't actually want an explanation.
Oh my God. I missed that. I missed that completely.
I can't believe you.
I missed that completely. Hey, it's 11 o'clock on a Sunday night here, boys.
George.
Hey, just last thing I want to say is just there's been loads of people this week in my bar in Bath that have signed up, subscribed to the channel on Apple Podcasts. Thank you to everybody, and a special shout out as well to a top regular, Geordie Kev, who is absolutely in love with the UFC. I hope he enjoys the show. He's a legend, Geordie Kev. So yeah, top man. And thank you to everyone who signed up for the podcast this week. You guys are legends.
Nice one. Thank you very much. Thank you. And if you are new to the show, obviously hit like, hit subscribe, and share with your friends and all those glorious things. We do have a little bit of merch as well. We got some beanie hats, not that you need it in the beautiful 23-degree heat that we're having here in the UK at the moment, but we also got some t-shirts as well. So get over to the Etsy. I'll chuck a link in the description below as well. Thank you as always to the three legs of the tripod, the eloquent analyst down the bottom, Georgian Casual Corner, and myself, Mr. Fight and Talk. Thank you very much for joining in, and we will see you next time for a breakdown of everything that happened next weekend. Hopefully we get some finishes. There will definitely be a finisher there, but we'll have to wait. Thank you very much, and we're out.